Happy Friday, February 4th, everybody. Well, the week has been nothing short of cold, messy in terms of both weather and news from all around the nation, and the nation to the north, too, as it were. New entry-level driver training regs go into effect this coming Monday, February 7th. Freight metrics continue fairly well in the spot market, though equipment and fuel costs continue their upward march right alongside that. We're going to step back from much of all that today, track back through our last few podcasts for more in some regards. Today, the FBI is asking for the trucking community's help in solving a cold case murder. Since Little Rock headquartered Special Agent Ann Alexander took over the case almost 2 years ago, work on it has revived, and Alexander and her team are making a public push this week in hopes of gathering leads into the 2006 murder of 19-year-old Tracy Owana Jones, who disappeared in November that year from a Little Rock area truck stop, where she'd been something of a regular at the time, attempting to collect magazine subscriptions.
Tracy Owana Jones was 19 when she was last seen. She was just a fun-loving young girl. At the time, she was working as a magazine salesman. I think we've all seen those people who, go around selling subscriptions.
I'm Todd Dills, as usual, your host for this edition of Overdrive Radio, and as you'll hear more from Special Agent Alexander there, Jones was last seen at the pilot stop at the Galloway exit off I-40 east of Little Rock. I believe it's exit number 161 there. Tragic story, for sure, as Jones' body was found more than a week later off I-40 in Memphis, Tennessee. Stay tuned for more from Alexander and others in the FBI team on how you might be able to help. There's a new $25,000 reward for information that leads to conviction. Also, Overdrive's own intrepid reporter Matt Cole is out earlier this week with a look at the Trucking Association's engagement with the first bit of detail we've seen on FMCSA's plans to implement the congressional requirement of a pilot program for under-21 interstate drivers. There's a lot to it, including significant required training, a proposal to require any pilot program participants to work within the Department of Labor's registered apprenticeship program, and more.
Those require certain, extra paperwork. It does more safety training for apprentices. A kind of a progressive wage system is a requirement to be a registered apprenticeship.
That would be progressive, meaning pay escalates with training and experience, which some among trucking associations see as an unqualified positive, though others look at it differently, let's say, and possibly limiting participation from some quarters. Just who? Find out in what follows in a talk with Cole. We might just get closer, to an answer to an age-old question. Is it right to call 18, 19, and 20-year-old adults quote-unquote teens? After this quick break for a word from Overdrive Radio's sponsor, First Guard Insurance, though, we'll dive into the cold case of Tracy Owana Jones with the FBI. Keep tuned.
First Guard provides commercial truck insurance to leased owner-operators done right, as we've done for more than 80 years. We provide physical damage and non-trucking. Many companies make you pay up to 6 months of insurance premiums up front, but not First Guard. We bill monthly, so you get quality insurance without needing to pay a lot of cash up front. Go to firstguard.com. That's 1stguard.com. First Guard. We speak trucker. Let's talk.
I'm Special Agent Ann Alexander. I have been a special agent with the FBI for about 12 years. Right now, for the past few years, I've been working violent crime, and I've also worked national security as far as counterterrorism and counterintelligence go. So it's been a pretty good career, and I'm at where I want to be. The agent who had this case actually retired, so I inherited this case, and it has been a quest of Connor and myself to, brief this investigation and get some more information back out there.
Connor Hagan, Public Affairs Officer with the FBI in Little Rock. I've been a Public Affairs Officer with the Bureau for 4 years. Previous to that, I did surveillance for the Special Surveillance Group within the Bureau. And I love my job and working with agents like Ann and trying to solve any types of cases. So, but we can definitely go into kind of the background of Tracy and her case and
Because this is an ongoing investigation, we're going to keep this kind of high level. We definitely want to give you as many details as we can. Tracy Owana Jones was 19 when she was last seen. She was just a fun-loving young girl. At the time, she was working as a magazine salesman. I think we've all seen those people who, go around selling subscriptions. And her focus at the time was that gas station. That's where she disappeared from, the pilot truck stop in Little Rock, and North Little Rock, actually.
It's I-40 and like the Galloway exit, I think. Is
Yes.
that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The Galloway exit, correct. Tracy had been working there that day. She was dropped off fairly early. If anybody's not familiar with Tracy's picture, her poster can be seen on FBI Most Wanted. It's actually the case of the week right now. And we have pushed this poster out everywhere. So a picture of Tracy can be found on almost any social media outlet that we have.
That picture is visible in the thumbnail image for this podcast. Or find a download of the full Information Wanted poster via overdriveonline.com.
Unfortunately, Tracy's body was recovered several days later on November 26th of 2006. Her body was found located outside of Memphis, Tennessee, just right off I-40. And if you're wondering why the FBI would be involved in a murder, that's because there was an interstate nexus there. So she was kidnapped and then she was taken across state lines, giving authority for us to work this investigation. That's why we're involved, and we have done a whole lot on this case, multiple interviews. We've done a lot with evidence. We just don't have any leads that have produced an actual suspect. So that's why now we are trying to revive this case and get all the information back out there, Tracy's picture, and we have a $25,000 reward. I'm not sure if Connor has told you that we have a $25,000 reward for anybody who brings information forward that actually gets us an arrest and conviction of the person who murdered Tracy. Her body was actually found pretty traumatically. Her cause of death was blunt force and sharp force trauma. So a 19-year-old girl to be picked up like that, there were multiple DNA samples on her. We do believe that Tracy was sexually assaulted, and we definitely know that she was injured and murdered in a very rough manner. When she was found, she was just kind of remotely in a field, and an ongoer seeing her body. So
Wow.
That's where we are.
In terms of, having been last seen, was she actually last seen? The last report that you have of her being seen was actually at the truck stop there?
Yes, that's where she was last seen. She was dropped off by someone that she was familiar with to actually sell magazine subscriptions there. She was working there that day.
Right.
She was never seen again once she again from being dropped off at the pilot truck stop.
And I know that there's been some intimation that you feel that, obviously the location of the truck stop gives you an idea that, maybe somebody in the trucking community could have information about this or something may have seen something that day that they may be able to share that will help lead to the perpetrator. And some of the notices that I've seen have suggested that you think the perpetrator may have some affiliation, some tie to the trucking community as well. Anything in particular that causes you to kind of feel that way outside of the fact that the last place she was seen was at a truck stop?
The only thing that makes us think that, as Connor has previously stated, I think maybe in other conversations with several of the trucking associations, there is nothing that ties Tracy's murder to a trucker.
Right.
On, circumstance. It's a very frequented truck stop that Tracy was at. And obviously there's regular Joes, who drive through there and stop and get gas and, get something to drink. But given the fact that she had been seen with several truckers, in and out that day, just talking about subscriptions, and the fact that she was found on such an interstate that was so close it's so close to Little Rock. That's only really a 2-hour drive. And to be on the 40 corridor, we're just trying to make the best educated guess that we can and get this to a community that may have actually seen where Tracy was. And any trucking, all the trucking associations have been very helpful. All of the gas stations.
Yeah. We've got, gas stations and across, the United States actually helping push her poster. I think that, Ann brings up a good point there. This is all educated guess, but where we're at right now is we're asking truck drivers who drove the Little Rock, Memphis area in 2006, if they worked that I-40 corridor, even if it's past that, but if they were coming through there frequently and they remember something was off, something seemed odd, if they remember seeing Tracy, give us a call.
Right.
Hear about it. We've got a lot of investigators that are able to go out to conduct interviews, and the whole point of this is to put out there to the trucking community that we need their help. And so far, the trucking community has been great. I think that with public help, this case is going to progress. But we are looking for that kind of specific timeline. If people were operating in 2006 on that I-40 corridor and they know anything about Tracy, to give us a call at 1-800-CALL-FBI.
What day of the week was November 15th, the last day that she was seen? That could be an important detail for somebody that really remembers their schedule from that time, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
November 15th was actually a Wednesday, and it was found that following Sunday on the 26th.
So that would have been so that would have been like a week and a couple of days afterward.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a sense that whether the murder occurred very close to the 15th or closer to the 26th? Do we know?
I would say closer to the 26th.
Okay.
Have a solid date on that. The coroner never produced an exact date like that, but when the condition of Tracy's body, I would say it would be closer, not necessarily on, but closer to the side of the 26th. And, her body was just dumped there. So that's not where Tracy's body was found. It's not where she was murdered. It's where it was laid.
And that was right along I-40. It wasn't just a back road or anything like that. It was pretty close to the interstate.
Yes, it was close.
Yeah. Anything else that we haven't gotten to here in terms of just details that might may jog someone's memory from back in that time?
One thing I do always want to throw out there, though, even with the picture, it is a good picture. Keep in mind when truckers are thinking back, she was about 5'4" and 110 pounds. So, she was shorter, she was more petite for sure. But, a lot of times that plays a factor is, they can see the face and be like, well, she looks kind of familiar, but, if very petite and this is a 19-year-old girl, brutally murdered. We're not giving up on this. Ann and her team are going to be working this and going to continue working this, but we need help from the community to help solve this.
And how long have you been on this particular case now?
Probably about a year and a half.
Great to see that that work is still being put in, even after all this time.
The one thing that we are also saying is we know that a lot of people in the trucking community, they have families, they have friends, they've got neighbors. And this was a 19-year-old girl who was brutally murdered, sexually assaulted. And this is a case that we're not going to give up on. This is a case that the FBI, we publicized even 2 years ago. We were out at the truck stop with some of the local media. The reward's a new feature. The reward, $25,000. That's a sizable amount of money. But the FBI is not going to give up on this case. We're not going to stop searching for the individual or individuals who killed Tracy, but we need the trucking community's help. I know that your podcast goes out pretty far, but we do ask that the trucking community pause, give some thought, especially to those truckers who were working in 2006 on the I-40 corridor.
If people do have information, what's the avenue to report it? Is it just the 1-800-CALL-FBI?
They can call 1-800-FBI, the one that Connor just spoke about, or they can actually call the Little Rock field office, the FBI office. And they can, even if they've heard my name on here, they can ask directly, to speak with me. So however it's brought in, the FBI will filter it into this investigation. It will eventually get to me, but you can feel free to call the FBI Little Rock field office. You can ask for Special Agent Anna Alexander if you want to, or just tell us that you have information regarding the Tracy Owana Jones case, especially if you want to remain anonymous. So that's fine. Anybody who is in this industry, I just can't thank you enough for bringing this investigation to light and getting Tracy's name and face back out there and letting us tell the story again, especially when, we have a new $25,000 reward again for the information and conviction of the murder of Tracy. So we really, really appreciate it.
Here's a big thanks to Special Agent Alexander and Officer Hagan for relaying the information. That number for the Little Rock field office is 501-221-9100. That's 501-221-9100. Special Agent Anna Alexander working the Tracy Owana Jones case. Okay, transitioning to the next part of the podcast, we'll take a closer look at FMCSA's plans, which look to be on something of a fast track to implement the under-21 interstate driver pilot program required by the big Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act highway bill late last year. We got our first glimpse of those plans last month when FMCSA issued a request for comment with a notice containing some detail on their plans. Overdrive News editor Matt Cole's got a report up this week, rounding up some of the commentary, mostly from trucking-related associations. Before we dive into the history of the under-21 pilot program with Cole, though, I'll note that our polling of all of you on this subject, most recently with the latest iteration of the so-called Drive Safe Act for a pilot program reared its head last year, has pretty consistently indicated that most owner-operators agree with the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association that allowing under-21 interstate CDL drivers is not the way to go, period. Last year, around 6 in 10 owner-operators indicated categorical opposition to any allowance for under-21 drivers to haul interstate. As owner-operator Chris Smith, a member of our Overdrive Trucking Pro group over on LinkedIn, put it to me recently, quote, "This will be a disaster if 18 to 20-year-olds drive OTR. Turnover will be the first issue, and accidents will come next." At once, given Congress required this program through legislation, plenty of groups and individuals opposed to the notion, including OOIDA, have chosen to engage with hopes of influencing its implementation to the positive, as it were. Keeping all that in mind, here's Cole, laying out the history of the notion of a pilot program to test the idea, which stretches back into the last decade legislatively.
Efforts to allow under 21 truckers to drive across state lines and interstate commerce have been going on since I think around 2015. I think is the first time it really started to take off. Nebraska Senator Deb Fisher introduced the Commercial Driver Act that year. It didn't go anywhere, and it wasn't quite the same as the Drive Safe Act that we're dealing with today, but it was just kind of that first step. The Drive Safe Act itself, I think, first popped up in Congress in March 2018. It was introduced in the House, and then the Senate took up a similar, I think it was the same thing, I think around August of that year. Never garnered any votes or any traction in committee or anything, so it just kind of died. But then this past year, when Congress was looking at at a new infrastructure bill, the Drive Safe Act, as it was written back in 2018, was included in that. And so when that was passed in November, it was included as part of the legislation that was passed as the bipartisan infrastructure law. So.
And in terms of, what the legislation required, did it go through, I guess, unmodified, and what are the basics of what it required?
There were a couple of changes. Basically, the legislation wanted FMCSA to establish a pilot program to allow 18 to 20-year-old truck drivers. I don't think there was a ton of details about what FMCSA could do. They kind of left it up to the agency to kind of establish it how they wanted to. There were a couple of things that trucking groups have brought up that were not requirements laid out in the legislation that they're concerned with. I know we'll talk about later, but part of that was the requirement, FMCSA's requirement for the registered apprenticeship program through the Department of Labor. They want carriers participating in the pilot to be part of that program with the DOL. So that's been kind of a contentious issue.
But basically, we're hearing about all of this now because the FMCSA put out a detailed proposal of how they would sort of structure this program. It seems like they're on a pretty fast track with this relative to first becoming legislatively required just late last year, right? But they're trying to get this out pretty quick, and everybody knows the supply chain congestion and hand wringing that's been going on for quite a while now. But I think that maybe FMCSA feels like this moving fast on this is a priority because of that. But this is not like it's going to be a simple process for any 18 to 20-year-old driver who wants to have this ability to run interstate. There's significant probationary periods, a lot of required training, right?
Yeah, that's right. There's 2 probationary periods, but in total, drivers in the program will be looking at 400 hours of training, and 240 of those are going to be behind the wheel with a trainer in the seat next to him. So
right.
It's definitely way over and above anything that that has been introduced before as far as training requirements goes.
In a lot of respects, these would be drivers that have been operating intrastate for quite a while already, with some additional training on the interstate loads. But yeah, FCSA put out that proposal, a lot of detail in that, and asked for comment. It was a very brief comment period, I believe, right?
Yeah, it was only 5 or 6 days. I think it was pretty quick because they were trying to get emergency approval from the White House to proceed with the information collection.
A lot of the associations weighed in, various other individuals and companies. Give me a little bit of the detail there on what we heard in terms of objections, measures of support.
So, the American Trucking Associations, Truckload Carriers Association, they've both kind of been supporting under 21 efforts for a while now. And, so they were both still supportive of FMCSA's proposal to a certain degree. They had some issues with some of the finer details, but overall they were both, both those groups were generally supportive of what FMCSA is trying to do here. The Commercial Vehicle Training Association, they represent a bunch of the, trucking schools out there. They support the program as well. They asked for, a couple of different changes, but overall, again, very supportive of the initiative. Groups representing small fleets, particularly OIDA, they've always kind of spoken out against under 21 drivers based on safety. So they, along with the Truck Safety Coalition, who was a lot more against it than OIDA was, but
the Truck Safety Coalition is made up of parents against tired truckers and crash, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, those 3 groups filed a kind of a joint letter or a joint comment together, vehemently opposing, using their words,
right,
pretty much anything to do with allowing under 21 drivers. OIDA was a little bit, they were opposed to it, but kind of, I think they are at the point where they understand it's one of those things that it's gonna start working its way through the process, and so they tried to offer some recommendations to make it safer. Both of those groups, though, they did cite studies, particularly from the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, that found that younger drivers are involved in more fatal crashes than more experienced drivers. Truck Safety Coalition also brought up an ongoing initiative by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration about teen driving, just trying to raise awareness to help teen drivers be safer. So, it's an ongoing debate, but by and large, groups are on both sides of it.
Are 18 and 19-year-olds teens? I mean,
I think it depends on who you ask.
They're adults, right?
Yeah, I mean, NHTSA's program seems to qualify teens as being 15 to 18. The Truck Safety Coalition pretty much used teens interchangeably with under 21 in their comments. Yeah. So, it's just one of those things that kind of depends on who you ask.
And it's like the rhetorical cudgel there, and referring to bona fide adults, military members as teens, but okay. Right. In terms of the practical approach to this, I know you mentioned that OIDA proposed some tweaks that I think a lot of the practical recommendations that came from OIDA and some of the other trucking associations as well were all kind of aimed at things that they believe will limit participation here, I think, right? Detail a little bit of that for me, Matt.
ATA and the Drive Safe Coalition. The Drive Safe Coalition is made up of over 100 trade groups across several industries. ATA and TCA are actually included in that coalition. They said that the requirement, the registered apprenticeship requirement, will be a big limiting factor. At least that's what they believe. Not just for small fleets, but fleets of all sizes. There's a lot of extra paperwork and requirements that go into being a part of that program.
ATA though has gone through the process of becoming a sponsor of registered apprenticeships itself, right? So presumably, I'm taking that to mean that they'll probably be able to help their membership do that.
Yeah, I assume so. Yeah.
Yeah. But I wonder if other associations might be likely to do that as well. I would guess even some of the folks for that smaller fleets members of as well. And what is it about the registered apprenticeship program with the Department of Labor? I mean, what is it about that, about being a part of that program? Do you feel that, is it just the sort of the paperwork aspect of it, conforming to all the things that program requires? What is it? I mean, what does the registered apprenticeship program require of a fleet that would be a part of it, I guess?
It does require certain, extra paperwork. It does more safety training for apprentices. A kind of a progressive wage system is a requirement to be a registered apprenticeship.
Progressive wage system meaning that
with more training and experience, they have to earn higher wages. So ATA and the Drive Safe Coalition were the biggest groups that spoke out against having that as a requirement. They said, that they would be okay if it was left in as an option, but they didn't feel like it should be a requirement for every fleet that wants to participate in this. Interestingly, though, OIDA highlighted that requirement as a positive thing, mainly because to make sure that drivers participating in the program are more protected. They cited workplace protections, the progressively increases in wages, and additional federal oversight into the program. You bring in the Department of Labor, so there's more than just DOT, FMCSA kind of overseeing the programs. So they feel like there's more protection for the young drivers that may be participating. ATA and TCA in their comments also, ATA particularly felt like the monthly data reporting requirements might be a little overboard for some carriers, especially small fleets that may not have the back office staff to kind of organize and gather those records and submit them every month. That was another potential issue. And all three groups, ATA, TCA, and OIDA, they all felt like smaller carriers will have more difficulty participating. OIDA actually argued there should be, for the safety aspect, there should be more data reporting requirements in the rule. But OIDA felt like the biggest barrier for smaller carriers is going to be insurance costs. They felt like a lot of the fleets that will end up participating are going to be those that are already self-insured up to a certain extent. Small carriers just don't have that luxury.
It is no secret. The insurance cost for the younger driver and the green newer driver is much more than for the experienced folks, and just generally very expensive for small fleets. I wonder though if depending on whether a small fleet might have an 18-year-old already working intrastate. It exists. It's not a common feature of over the road type hauling companies, but it could be a path forward there for some.
Yeah, and I think it would probably depend on the lanes that those drivers end up running in.
Right.
If they're running out in the Midwest for the most part, it might not be as bad. But if they're running the East Coast or more populated areas, probably looking at a different story.
Do we have an idea of when we are going to see this thing start to happen?
I'm honestly not sure on that. One interesting thing that the Truck Safety Coalition brought up in their comments, up until just last November, there are 49 states and Washington, D.C. that have allowed intrastate drivers under the age of 21.
Right.
New York passed a law in November that will allow that as well. They were the last holdout state. But they felt like there's just tons of data out there in those states that have been using or been allowing under 21 drivers, that before putting more under 21 drivers on the road and allowing them to cross state lines, they felt like FMCSA should gather data from those states and study that before putting younger drivers out on the road.
Right. I mean, people have done that, surely.
I'm sure there have
Insurance
been.
Institute for Highway Safety. I mean, all those statistics that that these groups are quoting, that surely that's exactly where they come from.
Right. And I feel like they're probably just trying to get a more comprehensive look at it.
Or, as it were, a long delay in any implementation of a program they object to categorically. Speaking of that, Cole finally offered a bit of a reality check when it comes to FMCSA's seeming intention of pushing this particular under-21 pilot program through quickly. We do at least have an example to offer as comparison in the U.S. military-trained under-21 program.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot more heat under this one to get it started as soon as possible, but they do have the military pilot program that I think it was required in the FAST Act in 2015. And they did some comment periods and things, but they didn't even start accepting drivers or carriers into the program until 2019. So,
right.
That was 3.5-4 years before it got off the ground to the point where they would even accept applications for it. So, I think participation has been really poor in that one. So I don't think there's been enough data collected to be able to draw any conclusions there.
You can find Matt Cole's reporting on the Under-21 pilot program as FMCSA starts the process of implementing what Congress required in last year's highway bill, infrastructure package, whatever we want to call it. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, right? Anyhow, find Cole's reporting via overdriveonline.com/overdrive-radio. There are prominent links to it in the post that houses this podcast for February 4th, 2022. Overdrive Radio is a production of Overdrive, the voice of the American trucker. It's edited and produced by me, Todd Dills, with a little acoustic guitar and other additional support from Overdrive Extra contributing writer and trucker-songwriter Long Haul Paul Marhofer. The podcast is backed up further by Overdrive news editor Matt Cole, who we heard from today, social media coordinator Holly Young, and executive editor Alex Lockey. Until next time, keep it pro out there.